Hey everybody, I'm Robert and I'd like to welcome you back to Apex Nürburg. Today I want to touch on something that's a little bit interesting actually. I get a lot of comments lately on YouTube here about, oh, did you rent out the R8 V10 when you had it? Do you rent out, I get people saying, can I rent the Pista? Will you let me borrow it for my wedding? All of these things. I think there's a big misconception about what these cars are to me and what Apex is. Apex is essentially a car rental, hotel, and taxi service on the Nürburgring, but what I don't think a lot of people realize is that I see the cars, for the most part, as my cars. The GT2 RS, 100% my car. 720S, I see it as my car. The 675 LT, those are definitely my cars, and they've never been used for the purpose of Apex, but although I have cars that are used as taxis, it does not mean that I'm going to let somebody drive those cars. And I think that that's a big misconception that people have. I see on certain YouTube channels that sometimes we'll get YouTube personalities that come to Apex and they say, oh, and you can rent the Pista. No, you can't rent the Pista. The Pista is a car that I bought for myself. And because I love the Nürburgring and I love cars, I will take people out on and maybe do some taxi laps on a track day just for fun to share the enjoyment of the car, because the reality is that most people are never going to be able to experience these cars. So I'm very fortunate, and I understand that I'm very fortunate in the aspect that I get to have these cars, that they're in my garage, and that I get to take them out. Right now I'm sitting literally 700 meters from the entrance to the Nordschleife, and I've got a season pass actually right here in my pocket. Even though the track's closed, I keep it on me all the time. And I'm very fortunate in that aspect, and a lot of people don't get that opportunity. So when I see somebody say, hey, was the R8 a rental? Is the GT2 a rental? Can I drive it? No, they're not. I see them as my cars, and I see them as something that I'm lending to Apex to share in the experience of what we're doing. We did a video with Misha recently. I don't even think it's been published yet, about the operating costs of the taxis, talks a little bit about depreciation, the cost of the teams. And at Apex on the taxi service, we do not make a profit. There's no profit made from the taxi service. But it's something that I really love to do. I love seeing the cars go out there. I love seeing the videos of the people having excitement and things like that. So it leads to, why don't I rent the cars out? We have the 720S. I did let an acquaintance that I know drive it the other day with Tim. Tim went out with him, but it wasn't a rental situation. It was an experience for him, something that he really wanted to do. And maybe that's probably the only car that I would even consider it on. But the reality is that if you look at my 675 LT Spider, I recently did a video on that and the damage that happened when I hit a deer. All I did was hit a deer, and it cracked the front splitter, front bumper, broke some of the coolant systems inside the fender, and the damage was 70,000 euro. Okay. On my cars, the excess is quite high because I have so many cars, and I say, look, I'm going to pay my own excess for the small damages that happen. That means windshields that break, stone damages that happen to a body panel, and everything end up being my cost to cover. If I let you rent the 720S and you take it out on track, and let's say that you drive straight through Adenauer Forest, because that's what a lot of people do, they get excited and they go straight through Adenauer Forest, and you drive that up over the curb and you rip off the front splitter, damage the under tray, and maybe break a shock or damage a shock or two, you're looking at a 50,000 euro bill, okay? A lot of people that come to the Nürburgring, they want an experience. I want a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So they come out and they rent a Polo GTI, or they rent something else. A Polo GTI, if you drive it straight through Adenauer Forest, you're probably going to be okay. We're going to do a check. Maybe you bend the rim, 200-300 euro. Maybe you do something like that. But if you bend the rim on the 720, we're talking thousands and thousands of euro. So for me, I actually have sort of a guilty conscience when I would think I'm going to let one of you take the 720S on track. If I know that in the back of my mind that you just signed up to take a car that's worth 300,000+ euro and take it on the track, and I probably am going to have 150,000 euro excess. So if somebody were to miss a turn completely, hit a guardrail, immediately you're talking 50,000+. Go straight through Adenauer Forest, you're probably talking 30 to 40, 50,000 euro. If you just bump into somebody else and you break a front bumper or anything like that, these expenses rack up very quick. And the fact that maybe I could charge 800 euro a lap in that car, and maybe I could sell 100 laps in a year, that would be pretty neat for me. in the sense that I could turn some revenue on a car that we all know I'm going to have a hard time selling. I still have in the back of my mind that concern about what happens to the customer when something happens, what happens to the car when something happens. And in my opinion, it just doesn't make it worth it. It means that the risk is too high for the reward that we can get out of renting the car. It doesn't mean that any of my cars, if the right person came and had the right setup, that I would say no. Don't ever ask me to drive my 675. Don't ever ask me to drive the GT2, the Pista. Those are my cars. What do we rent? We rent the Cayman GTS. We rent the M4, the M2, the GT86. The GT86 is a car that I also sometimes don't like seeing rented. It's a car that I feel like we bought it specifically as a rental, but it's become very dear to me because it is so much fun to drive. It's a car that I take out and I just go and have fun with on the weekends. Sometimes I come in like, guys, I want the GT86, and Diana or Victor says, oh, Robert, the car's rented out for the day. And I'm like, shit, you know, and because it's a car that I really enjoy. And it's a car that has had a couple incidences. It has slipped in coolant before. It's slipped in the rain before. But the beautiful thing about it is the damages to that car have never been too high. They've all been something that the person driving it can actually afford, and we find a solution to make it work. When you get to the supercars, it's when it's a problem. So I don't think that I will ever at Apex rent out supercars. I don't think you'll see me with a GT3 RS as a rental. I don't think you'll see me with a 720S as a rental, as much as I would love to. I would love for you guys to be able to come out here and drive the 720. Who knows, maybe in a couple of years when the car is worth less and things like that, maybe I will change my mind. But at the moment, I don't have a supercar that I would see worth the risk in terms of what we could get for the rental income. And the risk isn't so much for me, but it's for you guys. Somebody comes and they have a big accident that costs 100,000 euro. That could actually ruin them financially. And that's not something that we want to take on. And I'm obviously not going to let you take the 720, pay me 800 euro for a lap, have a 50,000 euro damage and say, oh, no worry, I'll cover it. That's not good business sense. So as of now, Pista, 675 LT, the Spider, the GT2, even all the Schirmer cars, those are my cars. I had a very, very, I would say, well-known person in the area, a lot of influence, asked me if they could rent the E92 XX31, and I said, no, I don't care who you are, you're not renting my E92. It's not a rental car, it's my personal car. They understood, they were disappointed. I think they took maybe a M4 or something like that instead. But it's something that I wouldn't even sell the E92. So if somebody came to me and said, Robert, I have 200,000 euro, I want to buy your E92, I wouldn't sell it to them. Therefore, 2 or 3 or 4,000 euro to rent the car is also not enough to make me budge on it. It's a car that in my opinion I can't replace, and a car that I don't want to have to worry about replacing. If that car gets crashed, everyone at Apex who's driven it, Tim's driven it, will tell you that if a car gets crashed, they definitely want it to be me that was behind the wheel, and that's what I want as well. I want to have the responsibility for that on my shoulders. But I hope that sheds a little bit of light as to what my thoughts are on the cars that are at Apex. I've got rentals and I've got my cars, and there's a very fine line between them. And I think that if you were to look at the Cayman GTS and up, that's where that fine line starts. Everything above that I see as my personal car. Some of them, like the GT2, I'm lending to Apex to share with the community, and the other ones are open for rental. But hope that gives a little bit of insight to my thoughts, why Apex is how it is with the car structure and how I see it. Anyways, I'll catch you guys later. Thank you.